Thank you so much for spending the next session with us. We know it's a really jammed up week with many meetings and many emails you could be attending to. So we are ever grateful that you are spending your next 20 minutes with us. To repay the favor, we plan to bring some real energy and some fun. So consider yourself warned. I'm Johanna DeYoung. I'm the Global Vertical Lead for Life Sciences at Slalom, and I'm here joined by my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Fatima Paruk from Salesforce, who is the Chief Health Officer, and then Sir Martin Landray, who is a professor and physician of medicine and epidemiology at Oxford University, as well as the Chief Executive Officer of Protas. So Slalom is a global consultancy. We have 12,000 people across 8 countries, and we sit at the intersection of business, technology, and humanity. Our ikigai, thank you for that, or our purpose is to help organizations dream bigger, move faster, and build better tomorrows for all. About a third of our business is in healthcare and life sciences, and we work across the value chain from molecule to market. It's meaningful work for us. We talk often about how profoundly personal it is, and we focus on being pragmatic, evidence-driven, and human-centric. Every year, we put out our annual trends report. You guys get the first look at that as we are launching it this week. It really covers many, many chapters, and today we'll be focusing on our perspective in clinical trials. Really, these are the trends we expect to see in the industry. Often, sometimes they're hopes or manifestations of what we'd like to see in the industry. And from a clinical trial perspective, we're really focused on really 2 things to kind of simplify. One is the expectation of increased trial performance through data refresh times, through health equity, through thoughtful application of AI, using RWD for simulation of performance for quicker starts, and better study design. This will all help humans work at the top of their license, as we often say, on the provider side of the industry. The other piece that we're expecting to see is around data maturity, big gains in data maturity. We're seeing a real resurrection of the enterprise data office, whose real purpose is to democratize data, to build data as an asset or have it centrally available for reuse and access. Requires data governance to be rebranded as an offense and not a defense, right? To integrate the many, many data sources we have that are structured and unstructured and multimodal, and really centralize them in a place where reuse is possible. This will help us with longitudinal views of our patients, help better design or select cohorts or site selection, and of course, increase the reuse of our data, which is a real chronic issue in this industry. I recently saw a stat that said of the world's volume of data, about 30% is healthcare and life sciences, which is pretty significant. And that's growing at a pace, compound annual growth of almost 10%. So far bigger, it'll be 36% by next year, far bigger than financial services or media and communications industries. But the truth of that is 90% goes unused, which is a truly stunning statistic. So if we can increase that reusability of previous studies or of information around our patients with governance, with proactive privacy and consent management, we see massive gains in all the value from the clinical trials that are underway. Okay. So I'm going to pass this to Martin so he can speak a little bit more about Protas, which you'll see quickly is Martin's eminence and expertise in the industry, but you'll also realize very quickly he has the potential to be your new best friend. So I'm very excited to hear from Martin.
Thanks very much, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here. So I'm going to start the story by thinking about the problem as a clinician. I'm trained as a doctor. I went into medicine to treat individual patients. And on Thursday mornings, if I still see individual patients one at a time in cardiology clinic when I'm not in California. And when we're treating individual patients, it's the evidence we get from randomized trials that is absolutely fundamental to knowing the difference between a drug that works and one that doesn't, how well it works, what the safety profile might be, and so on and so forth. Pick that up a level into public health policy, to regulatory licensing decisions, to payer decisions, is those randomized trials that really drive that evidence. So for something that's so fundamental, it's a shame that there has been so little innovation. In a world today where there is the sort of biological and data science revolutions of the last 20 years have created gene editing for common diseases, twice-yearly injections to manage blood pressure, the vision of vaccines even to prevent dementia. It's bizarre that we're still operating our clinical trials ecosystem as if carbon copy and a fax machine was state-of-the-art technology. The challenge and the impact of that conservatism, that failure to innovate in the clinical trial space, is really that fewer patients are enrolling in trials, and they tend to be a very narrow group of patients enrolling in trials. We're seeing many trials that are effectively designed to fail. Janet Woodcock, Deputy Chief Commissioner at the FDA, produced an analysis of all the COVID trials. Nearly 3,000 of them, 95% designed to be useless. I'm sure that wasn't the intention, but that was the impact. And the cost and complexity has grown exponentially to the point that for many of the big indications, trials are $500 million, $1 billion, $2 billion and soaring. With that sort of cost price, that's a real barrier to getting smart drugs through to, you might think of it as market, I think of it to better health. Some data which is now rather old, but it's 9 years old or so, but really makes that point. The burden of common conditions is rising. Our hospitals are full of people with common conditions, often in combination. Our health services, however is paying for them in whatever format, are unaffordable. Our individual citizens are suffering that burden. Economies are suffering that burden. And yet, actually, that is not where most of the effort in meetings like this one is actually focused. There's been incredible advances in rare disease, and that is fantastic. But if we want to hit and improve the public health crisis, we've got to do better. Our approach at Protas, which is a non-profit organisation, is really to transform that whole clinical trials process, particularly for later phase clinical trials. And this cannot be done simply by saying it's a data problem or it's a tech problem. It can't be done simply by saying, oh, we just need to smarten our act up a bit, fine-tune our protocols, have a slightly different outsourcing model for how we do, or vendor management model. This requires a big change in our entire approach. Thinking about smart trial design and delivery, thinking about the data tech, thinking about the policy and the regulation in parallel around one mission. And so for Protas's vision of smarter trials for better health, we're really aiming to facilitate that by applying those three themes simultaneously. On the design and delivery, to provide clear answers to important questions, and actually enable practical participation for patients and clinicians. So many protocols are designed by well-meaning, if you like, scientists or people within industry and companies, but they completely are infeasible, impractical for clinicians on the ground and the patients who you're expecting to turn up. It's as if we wrote the perfect protocol and you wonder why you have no customers, the customers in this instance being the patients who donate their time, energy, and consent to join the studies. I'll focus on the data and tech in a moment, but really we move away from how can we replace a photocopier with a data capture system into something that's much more like the sort of systems you would see in finance or even in air traffic control. And then around the policy development, making sure that the policies really do enhance trial quality rather than just checking what's easy to check. And that the wider policies from the health service, from payers, from professional bodies across the spectrum support the value of clinical trials. If we can get that right, we can get substantial changes in what's possible. So I started this slide with smarter trials for better health. I might finish the slide by saying better value treatments for all of those patients who need them. So is this all hypothetical? Is there any evidence that what I'm telling you is possible? Well, here's some of our experience in my role previously at Oxford University. So take in the top left-hand corner, this is a registration cardiovascular or renal trial where actually it exceeded its recruitment target because it could and it didn't cost more money. It had excellent completeness of follow-up. The patient stayed on the treatment. The trial cost a fraction of what a typical trial would cost, and it changed regulatory licenses in the FDA and in Japan and all around the world. So a better patient experience, a better trial staff experience, real-time data entry, customized exactly to the protocol, no need to look things up through file binders and file binders of SOPs. It reduces the need for looking stuff up and minimizes rekeying. In fact, it does no rekeying, minimizes challenges with data migration, data checking. In fact, the data management function takes a whole new form, most of which is you don't need most of it if you get the data entry right and the data connectivity right in the first instance. What about speed? Well, here's my extreme example. This is the recovery trial in COVID, where during the worst of the outbreak in January 2021 in the UK, we recruited 1,000 patients in 30 hours. Go away from COVID and say, oh, that was exceptional. There was a lot of it about, of course there was. There's a lot of heart disease about, so let's use that as an example. Even back in 2010, 2011, we were putting 1,000 patients into a big cardiovascular outcome trial per week, every week, for 8 weeks. Massively reducing the monitoring need. You don't need to check that the bottom copy matches the top copy if, in fact, you only enter the stuff once and you have properly validated systems for controlling those data. You don't need to send people to site if the whole system is working off a real-time, unified, live version of the truth. Improving the data quality by enforcing the protocol and reducing the costs. And that is right, reducing the costs tenfold. Entirely achievable, we've done it. So for Protas itself, we aim by 2028 to be starting 4 trials per year. That doesn't sound very many. 4 trials of 10,000 patients plus per year, so that we're then running 20 trials concurrently. Why do we want to run those trials? Because those are trials for treatments that otherwise wouldn't get studied, to answer questions that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. But they're also trials to demonstrate that this method actually works and how one can apply it in all range of different settings. Because nobody believes something's real until you show them a real example, and then everybody says it was obvious and they all want to go. And that obvious and they all want to go is part of our remit as a non-profit. It's making our tools, making our experience, making our lessons available to others. And that would drive reducing barriers to create new treatments, particularly for common diseases, generating the evidence that's needed for good healthcare and reaching patients wherever they may be. So I just finish up before I hand over to Fatima, is around thinking about the technology as one element of that. Remember, it's not just about the technology, it's about the mindset, it's about the design and the delivery, it's about thinking about it, what it looks like at the clinical interface, thinking about what it looks like to be a patient, it's about thinking about the policy, about thinking about the audience for whom you've got to convince when you've got your trial results that what you've got is a compelling result. If you want to know what compelling means when we've found that dexamethasone reduces the risk of mortality for patients with severe COVID-19 back in the summer of 2020, it took 3 hours from announcing the results for them to be NHS countrywide standard practice and 3 weeks for them to be global practice. That's what compelling results looks like, because we thought about the audience and we made sure our results got us to the quickest and highest quality way between not knowing the answer, knowing the answer, and convincing people with the answer so that they could apply it. Our partnership with Protas and Salesforce and Slalom really underpins our technology platform. And just a word on that. This platform, which we call Cantata, which, if you like, is a neat word. It means singing one song in different parts to produce high-quality music. Then, if one thinks about this system, so many of you will be operating multiple systems that perform bits of each of the functions I've shown on the slide. The electronic data capture, a rather dumb technology which just by and large captures data and checks that the data entry is plausible. A protocol is a recipe. You can program a recipe so that you know exactly when the patient should or shouldn't be seen next, based on the information you've already got there, whether they should or shouldn't get given the next dose of the drug, whether there should be extra blood safety checks made, and so on. But also all the orthogonal processes, all the logistics processes, the quality management process, the clinical oversight and safety processes. There's a lot of talk about the jargon of decentralized trials. If you want to do decentralized trials, you have to have centralized data. And actually, if you take that model, you can apply that model to any site-based trial or hybrid trial or whatever else it is. If everybody's looking at a universal copy of the truth with fine-grained access control, think of the power of doing that. That's why we built this system with our colleagues at Salesforce and Slalom. It's built on 20 years of experience of doing this with clunky, old-fashioned academic code, but using the same approaches and driving many of the improvements I've suggested. Fatima, I have left you 3 minutes. That's what you told me that you needed.
Listen, Sir Martin, thank you so much for all that you're doing, all that you're continuing to do. And as a clinician, as a former clinical researcher, I mean, the points that you discuss are so close to home. If you just think about, the pain that I've personally lived, right, in trying to put together an outline of what a clinical trial needs to look like, going and getting a lot of the approvals for the compliance, making sure we can recruit adequate patients, losing them to follow-up, losing the data, and then trying to get to an outcome. I mean, there's so much that needs to be done, and I'm really happy to say, hey, I'm at Salesforce, and recently we made a pretty big announcement last fall, and that is that we are launching a new fully compliant end-to-end life sciences platform that will enable the work that Sir Martin and others who are unbelievably close to the problems that are facing our patients, our researchers, and getting in the way of getting to outcomes. We're out there again, actually now taking the technology and the power of the technology, combining it with what is best in class, and going out there and truly revolutionizing the way we actually do the work. So with this announcement, Salesforce started to assemble the teams that are going to be absolutely necessary to build out on this, assembling the skill sets. I'm fortunate enough as Chief Health Officer to lead a team of industry experts, including physicians, nurses, R&D, clinical trials experts, those who have been at the front of care and research and design. And so that's, again, one area that's very, very cool. I get to be the clinical voice of reason to product. We have a new SVP and GM for our Life Sciences Cloud, Frank DeFesh, who's not here, but will actually be here a little bit later today, to my understanding. And we get to partner very closely to ensure that we are bringing in the voices of our customers, the voices of our partners, and overcoming a lot of the gaps, perhaps, through effective partnerships and ensuring that we can together move the market forward. So where we started and where are we headed, right? Ultimately, this all starts with the patient. Salesforce, again, we've been in healthcare for 34 years at this point, which is the existence of the company. That being said, we are now making that very specific investment and very intentional investment in life sciences, given the intentional listening that we've been doing to our customers and partners. And where the gaps are coming out is there is a huge need for this platform that is going to truly make things easier. And that, up there on the screen, we have a few different areas where we're actually starting to think about this, and we've already started with our medtech space, for example. And we're looking now to bring together the medical, the clinical, and the commercial. And so that has provided a unique place to start, again, bringing together that fully compliant platform and making sure we are enabling value at every step of the way that will enable the optimal most efficient, best possible health outcomes for all. So with that, thank you. I think I'm like right at time.
Yeah, I think we
All
have one slide, and you're right, we are ending it right in time. Thank you both for sharing today. Martin, your big ambition is so inspiring. I hope we delivered on our promise to bring personal and energy, and please give us feedback. We'd love to connect with you, and thank you for the time. I hope you have a great rest of the day.